communication, strategic, connectedness, includer, and positivity. My name is Amber Fields, and I am the Chief Culture Officer of trueU. And my biggest aha around my strengths is that I get to lean into them and that they are no longer a fault. I used to be accused of some of my strengths being like too much, or, you should probably not be that kind of vulnerable leader because not everybody in the world is like that. And so through this process, I have learned how to channel my strengths and use them to do really good things in the world.
I'm Darren Verasami,
I'm Brandon Miller,
and this is The Strengths Whisperer.
the show empowering leaders to create, build, and sustain great places to work. On this episode, we have Amber Fields, Chief Culture Officer of trueU. Welcome to the show, Amber.
So excited to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I am excited to talk to you about your Clifton StrengthsFinder assessment that you just completed. And you are the first guest we've had who has recently had a team session facilitated for you with a strengths expert, one of our very good friends in the Indianapolis area, Sarah Robinson. So I definitely want to ask you about that. But let's start first talking about your top 5 strengths. So I have it as communication, strategic, connectedness, includer, and positivity. And of those 5, here's one of my favorite questions. Which one resonates with you the most? If you could get it down to 1, or even if there's a tie with 2.
So my tie is communication and connectedness. But if I had to choose, communication is probably the one.
Oh, that's a good one. So people who lead with communication often find themselves in the job of being the culture interpreter. They help with the conveyance of messaging. So communication, pretty simple concept. Sender, receiver, message in the middle, right? Like pretty simple concept that we screw up all the time. I mean, all the time. Whatever the sender intended, the receiver isn't hearing, the message is gobbledygooked. So how often do you find yourself, wherever you find yourself, and you hear communication happening, whether it's from a stage, 2 people, a room of people, and you're thinking to yourself, that person is talking, and most of these people have no idea what's being said right now?
Quite frequently, actually.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
And do you ever feel like you have to just raise your hand and be like, I think what you meant to say is this, and this is how they might hear that?
Yes. One of my favorite phrases is, "This is what I heard you say."
Ah, good, good. Yes, every communicator just nodded their heads and went, oh my gosh, there's someone like me. Yes. And I will say this for communication, because this strength has such a power of telling the tale. They can tell the story. They can bring events to life by telling a great story, giving vivid imagery, helping people relate. Now, some folks can do that from the stage. They're great. Put a mic in their hands and they just go and go and go. But others, they write them. Some do both. So curious for you, how do you feel about, the opportunity to bring words to life, make the story real, make it vivid?
Oh my gosh, Brandon, it lights me up. So I'm going to tell a short story
I was
about.
hoping. That was like here's a softball, Amber. Go ahead.
Yes. So I went to school to be a television news anchor. Sometime in high school, I was doing like the news for school, and someone said, "Wow, you would be really good on the news." And so that was it. I was hands down like going to do that. And then I'm in my senior year of school. I'm the news director of a local radio station, and 9/11 happens. And I am on the air the day of 9/11, having to communicate hands down the worst news that our country had ever experienced in a long time. And so
Since Pearl Harbor, right?
yes. So I thank goodness that it was radio and not television, because I'm crying through giving this news report. And it was really hard to make the decision that I made after this, because I had an $80,000 degree that said, yeah, you should probably try this, because I was good with the mic. You put me on stage and I light up. I'm a great communicator. I'm a great storyteller. I light up a room. I get people excited about whatever the topic is. And I knew that I didn't have any other options to use that gift in that time. if I wasn't going to choose that path. Well, I don't know for any of our listeners that know about how much money a news reporter or an anchor makes. Yeah, like $20,000 a year, and they're going to make you move to North Dakota because where I live is Indianapolis. And back then they were a top 25 market. I just got married. My husband had two small kids. And so the moral of the story is I put my career on the back burner. I tried it for a little bit. I was a writer for a local television station. I had interned at a couple different places. I worked at a radio station, and it just was not fulfilling. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go do something else that takes care of my family, and I will figure me out later. Mm, that was tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I can imagine having to share the news of 9/11 was quite in and of itself an event that you remember in life. And when we lean into our strengths, we find that in the moments where it counts, where there's crisis, these talents, so the Clifton strengths for those listening today, measures talent. And talent is simply a recurring pattern of how we think, how we feel, how we behave. And out of the 34 potential talent categories, they're called themes of strength. They're organized into the most intense to the least intense. So, in a report where, in your case, communication is number one, we could say Amber could not unbe a communicator if she tried.
Yeah.
Meaning, if I said, for all the money in the world, you have to stop being a communicator, just end it, it's over. What would
Yep.
that be like for you?
Torture.
Yeah, exactly. Because the idea of not being true to ourselves, not being who we were made to be once we've discovered who we are, is such a detractor from life's energy, life's force in us, that which gives us purpose and essence. And when we can find work that aligns with our talent, that aligns with our strength, now we're doing meaningful things. We're making an impact. We're having the opportunity to do something significant. So let's advance the story. So here we are, and I'm going to use the title Culture Queen because it's something that came up between us. And I'm sure with high communication and the emphasis on healthy, strong workplace cultures, this probably serves you in that capacity. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what can you tell us? I mean, how does being a strong communicator support you in building strong, healthy workplace cultures, both for your place that you work and the influence that you have on other workplaces?
Yeah. I'm going to rewind it back just a little bit because Culture Queen came from my early career. I had to find the combination where I could use my gifts and make really good money. And guess where that lands you? Sales.
Yeah.
But what I realized when I was in sales is that I am serving a customer inside of my organization as well as the customer externally of my organization. And so culture became a part of who I was everywhere I went because I recognized the importance of making sure that my people were happy. Because internally, when my teams were happy, my clients were then going to also be happy because the people showed up at work in their highest and best selves. They were excited. I sold IT services forever. So when my clients call in and get somebody on the other side of that phone, they can tell whether or not they want to help them, whether they want to be there. And so I created a culture of recognition, of team engagement, of just helping people connect because, connectedness was my number two. So I used my strength to pour into other people, elevate who they were as people. And then it served the greater good for our entire organization and the people that we served, which then landed me a job in culture, which is a total God thing. It was a total faith driven experience because I couldn't have made this job up for myself if I had tried.
I love it. I love it. And on that note, we should jump to connectedness because you said that was right there, hand in hand with communication. And people with connectedness do not believe in coincidences. They believe everything happens for a reason and with purpose. And for some, it's the cosmic connection. The universe does that. For others, it's the finger of the divine. It's God's will in someone's life. For others, it just really is a deep seated belief in the spiritual connection between all things. And they know that everything affects everything else on some level in some way. And so you mentioned just seeing this happen and just the from your perspective, as it sounds like a person with strong faith, these things lined up for you. They were ordered, and now here you are in a role that seems to match all of this awesome talent and strength you have with the perfect fit role.
Brandon, it's alignment. It feels from, from my faith to who I am as a person to what is possible. We talk about this at church all the time about whenever you find your God given gifts and how that feels and how much in flow and how much better it is to recognize what those gifts are, because gifts are meant to be given away. But you can't give them away intentionally if you don't know what they are. And it's funny how the people around you, this one particularly was my husband, who recognized the strengths that I had and the gifts that I had. And he stopped me one day and said, "When are you going to realize that you don't need to search outside of yourself any longer, that you have everything that you need already?" Mind blown, right?
Let's just pause on that. When are you going to stop looking outside of yourself and realize you have everything in you that you already need?
Yeah.
Did we capture that right?
Yes.
What's your husband's name again?
His name is Daniel.
Can you give Daniel a high five for me?
Yes.
Because that was brilliant. That captures Dr. Donald Clifton, the founder of it was called Research Selection Institute. And then he purchased the Gallup organization from Dr. George Gallup because he wanted a bigger megaphone. And Gallup was positioned as the most trusted brand in the world. And Dr. Clifton, on the few recordings we have of him, talks often about a person discovering their God given strengths. And he references this in Now Discover Your Strengths and Soar with Your Strengths as a way to say, we have spent so much time as humanity thinking about what's wrong with people that then creates an identity crisis in people to become who they were meant to be, that they're stalled in development. It's arrested development. They can't go forward because they're too busy trying to fix who they can't ever become. And he noted this all the way back to children, and education, but put his emphasis in the Gallup organization's emphasis on the workplace. And what you just captured with your connectedness is the essence of this movement. It's let's give people the gift of knowing who they are and where they can apply that identity for maximum benefit for the world, their circle of influence, themselves. And it seems that you're resonating with that.
Absolutely. I actually grew up, Brandon, with most of the influential people in my life telling me that my strengths were actually my weaknesses. So, an over communicator, you talk too much. Do you know how many times in school, elementary school, I got in trouble for talking?
I could probably guess because that was me too. I was the kid that consistently got sent home or sent home with the referral notice for talking too much in class. And then I don't know about you, but I had a little sharp edge to me where I would even talk back.
Oh, don't even. My mom's going to listen to this and she's going to be like, "Oh, that girl stressed me out." Because it's true. The other part of it was the connectedness. So I'm the person who is the bridge the gap. So if I bring people together, and oftentimes my circle of friends, I couldn't get them to connect in a way because I see connection and possibility and opportunity through all people, and it was downplayed. So you mentioned earlier about what bringing Sarah in and working with my team, and through that, just some great information about how I can lean in and how I already have and got confidence around being more intentional using these and not letting the story replay about how these are bad. It was incredible.
I love and appreciate that. And I want to get into your experience with a true strengths whisperer coming in and talking to your team, an expert. But I do want to mention this point for our dear listeners that it is very likely there are strong patterns of talent that you have that because in your youth, they could be defined as raw. They were uncut. They were still being developed. And because they were a lot, because they're just patterns of behavior and they're going to show themselves. So whether that is you're an intellection and you were really shy as a kid. So those are those on that side. Or as in Amber's case, high communicator, and you were the definition of the opposite of shy. You were, had the ability to talk and communicate. People in your life were like, yo, bring it down. And instead of seeing it as love that, it's going to be an amazing talent for you in your world. We're going to harness this wind and create power with it. It can be told to as you're too much. Stop this. It's irritating. It's frustrating. And for all of our listeners, Amber, I think we can encourage them with when you find who you are and you align it with a purpose and a mission, now you're living. Now you're thriving. Would you say that's been your experience?
Oh my gosh. Like, hands down, when I surrendered my career to God in March of 2021 and got out of and said, IT consulting, I'm done. I need to do something else. And I had IT friend mentors that were telling me, you do belong in HR. You know that, right? On the people and culture side of things. And that was exciting to me. That was inspiring. I didn't know a thing about it. So I thought, except that I had been solving people problems with technology solutions the entire time because I'm also strategic and I can find a solution and a possibility for anything. And I did not know that that's what strategic for strength finders meant, but when you said that to me at the event that we met at, my mind was blown because I couldn't figure out this feels like intuition, this feels like something that I'm really good at it, but I could never put my finger on it. When you said that, it was like, "Oh, that's what that means."
I have come to appreciate the fact that I have a strategic bias in a good way. And I seem to have this internal meter that we find like strategics. Because I think almost every guest we've had on our show, this is our first season, has high strategic. And we end up unpacking, and I tell them, strategy in the dictionary is something anyone can learn. Anyone can learn strategy, and it's important and it's very helpful. Being intuitive, being strategic, as Clifton Strengths defined it, is the only strength that they know you cannot learn, you can't teach. Because to tell someone, here's what you're going to do, let me teach you. You're going to be faced with multiple scenarios. And in your brain, in nanoseconds, you're going to sort and select which is the best option to choose, explain it to people, get them on board, and go down that pathway. Ready, go. Let's learn how to do that, right? And yet, I imagine Amber, if we told you today, Amber, it can't be done. You just can't do it. It'll never happen. We're over. What happens inside of you?
You die a little inside. You're like, "Yeah, okay, I do not believe you." And I have a sign over here that says, "Underestimate me. That'll be fun."
Oh, we got to capture that quote. Underestimate me. That'll be fun because it's almost like this moment of challenge accepted.
Mhm.
Is that accurate?
For sure. Watch
Yeah.
me. I will
Yeah.
find a way.
Said every strategic ever that I've ever worked with or ever had on this show. And I share this strength where I'm like, oh, please tell me I can't do it because you just added eternal fuel to my fire. And this is now game on. Okay. I want to hear you had, I don't know if you know this. So Sarah Robinson and I were part of the inaugural Gallup class. So we're about to celebrate 10 years, our reunion. And so I've known Sarah from the origin story of the launch of the global strengths movement. So you couldn't have gotten a better person or a player in there. But what did you learn? What happened bringing in a strengths expert to work with the team at trueU?
She was incredible. Sarah is so articulate. She is super fun. And she even says, like, I love it because she's so accountable. She said things to my team that was really hard to hear. And one of my things about this type of growing and learning is I believe it's great to understand my strengths. It was a very freeing experience to know that I could step into my gifts. But what was even more important to me was to understand my team's gifts. Because when you can understand other people in your life's gifts and where they're contextually coming from and why they operate the way that they do, the way that we did business and live life together looked completely different. And the overlap. So when you see three people who do member engagement have relator, you're like, "Oh, well that makes sense." So
Might
it gives
might be a clue.
right. So when you're hiring, having them take strength finders ahead of time so that you can see what gaps they fill
Mm.
because you want a well-rounded team. You don't want everybody, and I know that that's nearly impossible for them to have all 5 strengths aligned. I think she said 1 in 33,000 or million or something like that. I was like, "That's a big number." So, it was so enlightening, and then she poked a hole in one of my teams, like, blew it up for her, and it was like, "By you saying yes to everything, you're actually taking away and trying to control," and I don't know the
Oh,
exact
she dropped
phrase.
one of those bombs on a high
But she
responsibility achiever. Yes.
but it was so gentle and so loving, and my teammate Kristen was like, "Oh, burn, Sarah." And it changed everything about the way that she does business and how she prioritizes her workload for the good.
Yeah, good. What do you see now? Okay, so that happened a little bit ago. Let's maybe a couple months now.
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple months later, going into the new year, we're in January of 2023 recording this episode. What do you see coming next? You have this information, you have this knowledge, and Amber, many teams that go through the experience of really digging deep in their strengths, put it on the shelf as a wonderful experience, but they don't translate it into an ongoing engagement. They don't make it a part of our ethos. What is your plan for that? What have you learned that might be what you carry forward?
Continuous learning. Let's
Yeah.
dive a little deeper. Let's do another session, in 3 to 4 months at another quarterly, like coming back to this a couple times a year. And what else do we need to know about it? The thing that I can tell you that came out of this one that I'm looking forward to, and I've already started to see in 6 weeks that we've done this, and we had one person that wasn't on the team. She actually did her session with Sarah this morning. I cannot wait to hear about it, is cohesiveness. We work through problems so much faster because there's not this level of defensiveness really or questioning, oh, the reason why Marissa is the way that she is or Karina is the way that she comes across this way is because she's about individualization and she's intrigued by the unique qualities of other people. And so it's the context of this is just it just helps you build better relationships with people, I believe.
I love it. I love it. I want to remind our listeners this is Amber, the culture queen, who is now the chief culture officer of trueU, former TV news anchor, amazing person of faith and family person. You have a few kids, is that right?
More than a few.
Yeah, it's
5.
got five kiddos that you're leading and loving. And I love to ask this question for someone who just had the team experience. Has the thought or transition occurred to you how this now goes home to the kids?
So, it's actually one of the questions that I have for you.
Ah, let's do
You
it.
said I was allowed to ask questions. My kids' ages are 22, 21, 18, and a set of twins that are 11, almost 12. Is there a strength finders for kids? Can they take this and it be accurate? Because yes, you're absolutely right, Brandon. I have see this cohesiveness at work. It feels so good. And now I'm coming home and struggling with some of the preteen and kid things. And one of my kids is very strong personality. She is literally me, but like 10 times more than what I was at her age.
Imagine that. I'm
I know,
crazy, huh?
right? My mom's laughing because she's like, I told you it comes back tenfold. And she is all that. And I don't want to diminish her gifts because it's just more. You said it earlier, it's just more and it needs to be channeled, but she doesn't know how to do that yet. So, as her parent, how do I coach, teach, and love this child and not diminish her gifts like how it happened to me?
Good. Let me start with saying that very early in the foundation of this movement, Dr. Donald Clifton was probably more interested, concerned, and wanting to invest in children than even workplaces. But they have a saying at Gallup: no money, no mission. So the Fortune 500, the S&P 500, they beckoned because they could go and solve macro work challenges, specifically employee disengagement and increasing well-being. And that makes a lot of sense. But the movement has never lost that edge. It's a secondary, but many people in the world who do this work do work with families. They do engage at this level. So for your older than 13s, well, even older than 15, the resource you'll want to find is called Clifton Strengths for Students. It's a resource that you can find easily on any book retailer that you prefer. And Clifton Strengths for Students is a resource where it helps kids to think about their career, their calling, their college major, what they may be looking for. And so it's a small resource where the reading is maybe 30, 35 pages, gives an index of all 34 of the strengths, and then a little tear out code for them to take the Strengths Finder. Now, the Strengths Finder is exactly the one you took. It's why they recommend around sophomore, junior year reading level. And their results, though, are translated into a different report. So now they're going to see a report that more connects them to their future. So Clifton Strengths for Students, if you're listening today, great resource for your teens, your young adults, and very much as also a father with a large family is a bedrock for how we've raised our kids. Now, before that, they have a resource that Gallup offered a few years back called Strengths Explorer. And Strengths Explorer is for the 10 to 15-year-olds. Call it in that realm. And Strengths Explorer is an untimed. So the Clifton Strengths has a timer. It's every 20 seconds. It moves you into a place where you're choosing intuitively or with intention because you have to keep up with the timer. So it helps move you out of over analysis to a place where you're going to hopefully get a more actual outcome. Strengths Explorer allows a child to take their time. A parent can sit with them, and out of the results, they get their top three. And these three give them really nice exercises, insights into how they can grow. So the book associated with this, you can either buy Strengths Explorer standalone or Strengths-Based Parenting as a book that has a code both for a parent and a child. And that's a Dr. Mary Rechtemeyer. She's in the Clifton family, wrote this one. Really great resource for the younger kids. I'll go one step further because you teed it up. So Anna Lynn and Brandon Miller wrote a book called Play to Their Strengths. And our resource was written as parents who discovered that we would have a greater impact with our teens and emerging young adults at the time by focusing on their strengths. So we get into the nitty gritty of the philosophy and the practicality of this. So once you have results, what do you do with this as parents? Like, how do you engage? And we give the readers a walk through the different personalities of our 7 children and how we've leveraged this with them. And now in our book, we mention our in-law children. So 3 of them are married. So there's 10 total now, and we're adding grandchildren. So with all of that, it gives some nice insight. So there's 3 resources for you, Amber, and to our dear listeners that might be helpful as you take Strengths home.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. It's rounded. It's for everyone. It's for businesses. It's for our families. And I think in the end, it's just going to help make life so much better, relationships better. We're all trying to get to that place, like the next level of whatever we are, something bigger than us. And I feel like Strengths Finders has helped me achieve that and my team and so many other people that I've talked to who are a fan of it.
I could not agree more. And so, Amber, if people wanted to learn more about you and trueU and the amazing work you're doing, where would they go to connect with you?
Absolutely. They would go to trueU.com. We are a community of business leaders who believe that our people are our number one strategic advantage. And we help organizations continue to elevate, grow their culture, and develop their people into the best version of themselves so they can live good lives and be good people leaders and continue to thrive in the world of business. And so you can also find me on LinkedIn under Amber Fields. And I believe they can find those links in the show notes.
They sure can. Amber, it has been so wonderful talking with you today and being someone who embodies what we call a people first leader. You truly take your culture responsibility very seriously. Thank you for that investment. And to our listeners out there, are you ready to discover your strengths, to accelerate into life like Amber has? We believe in this path so much. We are offering our listeners the opportunity to discover their top 5 strengths. Email me at Brandon, Brandon, at 34strong.com. That's the number 34, the word strong.com, with the subject line top 5 to request your StrengthsFinder code. And we'll make sure that that gets over to you. And so with that, thanks for joining us on this episode of The Strengths Whisperer. What did you take away from the conversation with Amber? We'd love to know. Again, just email us at Brandon at 34strong.com. Again, if you're ready to discover your top 5 strengths, include top 5 in the subject line. Amber, thank you again for joining us on the Strengths Whisperer. Thank you, dear listeners, and we will see you soon.